He knew they could not fight forever. The ammo in his rifle was running low, his strength fading. But then the alien tugged at his chest weakly. Pointing upward toward the ridge above the battlefield, through the smoke, the soldier saw it. A small signal beacon, still flashing faintly. Half buried but working, the alien's eyes burned with urgency. The meaning clear, if they could reach it. They could send a final distress signal, not just to call for help, but to prove that the codes had worked, to show the galaxy that this so-called useless warrior had struck a blow that would echo forever. The soldier gritted his teeth and nodded, shifting his grip, sprinting low between cover as enemy fire chased their heels. Every step a battle, every breath a war. They reached the base of the ridge, the soldier's lungs burning, his arms aching from carrying the alien. But he pushed upward, dragging them both higher. The alien coughed violently, blood staining his lips, his body trembling. Yet his eyes never left the beacon above. He wanted to live, to prove the universe wrong. The soldier stumbled, a shot grazing his arm, pain flaring bright. But he refused to fall. He pressed on, finally collapsing behind the beacon. Panting, blood dripping from his wound, the alien leaned against the console with shaking hands. His claws fumbling over the keys, the soldier guided his hand, helping him press the final sequence, and with a low hum the beacon roared to life, its signal cutting through the smoke-filled sky. Reaching far beyond the battlefield, the enemy saw what was happening and charged. Their war cries echoing, weapons blazing. The soldier threw himself in front of the alien, his rifle barking with its last rounds, each shot tearing into the charging soldiers, the recoil slamming against his bruised shoulder, until finally the weapon clicked empty. He dropped it and drew his sidearm, firing until that too was spent. Then he stood with only a combat knife, his body a shield between the enemy and the broken warrior. Plasma fire scorched the ground around him. But he did not move. He refused to fall back. A bolt struck him across the chest, his body jolting with pain, but he stayed standing. His hand braced against the beacon as though holding it upright with his own strength. The alien screamed weakly, his voice raw with anguish reaching toward him. But the soldier only turned his head slightly, giving him a faint smile through blood-streaked lips. "I told you. I wouldn't leave." With a final surge, the beacon's light pierced the clouds, broadcasting the codes and their location across the stars. The enemy froze as their comms cracked with chaos. Reports of fleets falling silent, weapons failing, their empire unraveling in real time. Their fury turned to confusion. Their charge faltering, the soldier staggered, his knees threatening to give, but still he stood, until the last of his strength bled away and he collapsed beside the alien. His body heavy and broken, the alien caught him weakly, dragging him close despite his paralyzed limbs. His eyes wet with something the universe thought he had forgotten. "Gratitude," he whispered in his broken tongue, his voice trembling but clear in meaning, not useless, not forgotten. And as the beacon's light lit the sky, the galaxy would remember this moment, when one human stood between life and death for a paralyzed warrior, and together they proved the universe wrong. The soldier's heart raced. He crouched lower, urging him softly, "Tell me." And though the alien's words were still broken, fragments came through, enough for the soldier to piece together the truth. The warrior held codes, ancient and powerful, codes that could disrupt enemy defense grids, codes the galaxy thought had died with him. The soldier's eyes widened at the weight of it. Suddenly, the mission was no longer just survival. It was bigger than that. Saving this warrior meant more than defying abandonment. It meant holding the key to turning the tide of the war. He looked back at the alien, who had sunk weakly against the wall, his eyes dim but steady. And the soldier whispered fiercely, "Then we fight for more than your life. We fight for every life." The alien's chest rose unevenly, his breath shallow, but in his eyes a spark returned. Faint but undeniable, a spark of pride he thought lost forever. Yet fear still clawed at him. Fear that his broken body would fail before the codes could ever be used. Fear that the soldier would die carrying him. He tried to shake his head, to tell the human to leave him and take the knowledge instead. But the soldier only leaned closer, his voice like iron. "I won't leave you." "Not while you breathe." Outside, the sound of heavy machinery grew louder, enemy forces sweeping closer. The soldier knew they would not have much time. He gripped his rifle, his eyes hard. then looked back at the alien one last time. "We get out of this together." And for the first time since his fall, the alien warrior believed it might be possible, that perhaps the universe had been wrong to call him useless. Because in this dark and broken place, with death closing in from all sides, one human had chosen to stand between him and the end, and that choice carried the weight of worlds. The soldier knew their time was running out. The sound of engines and stomping boots grew louder, shaking the ground beneath them, dust falling from the broken ceiling of the outpost with every rumble. He glanced at the alien warrior propped against the wall, the once proud fighter now trembling in pain, but with eyes that burned faintly with the spark of purpose. The soldier's jaw tightened as he slung his rifle across his chest. Adjusting his stance, he could not run any farther, not while carrying the heavy weight of his companion. The patrols were closing in from every direction, and soon this place would be surrounded. There was only one path left to take. They would have to make a stand. He knelt briefly by the alien, gripping his shoulder firmly, his voice steady despite the storm outside. "You said you know the codes, right? Then guide me. Tell me what I need to do. Because if we can reach the comm system, we still have a chance." The alien's eyes widened slightly. He nodded weakly, his claws twitching toward the melted consoles at the far side of the room. The soldier moved quickly, dragging a portable power pack from his gear and connecting it to the remains of the comm unit. Sparks hissed and smoke drifted upward, but a faint glow flickered to life across the cracked screen. The alien coughed, his voice hoarse as he forced out instructions in broken fragments, his words sharp with urgency, though the soldier did not understand the language fully. He caught enough, piecing together gestures and tone. His hands moved across the keys as the alien guided him, each command unlocking buried layers of systems that were never meant to be touched by human hands. Outside, the voices grew louder. Weapons being loaded, the enemy knew they were here. Shadows stretched against the walls as searchlights drew closer. The soldier worked faster, sweat dripping down his face, his heart hammering against his ribs. Then suddenly the console beeped, lines of alien code filling the screen, and the paralyzed warrior's eyes lit up. For the first time since his fall, he felt useful again, but the moment of hope was shattered by a blast against the outer wall. Metal shrieked as a section collapsed, dust exploding inward. Enemy soldiers storming into the outpost with weapons raised. The soldier reacted instantly, his rifle snapping to his shoulder as he unleashed a hail of fire. Sparks flying, shadows jerking back. The first wave of attackers fell, but more poured in, shouting war cries, their armor glinting in the searchlight beams. The alien on the floor growled faintly, his claws digging into the ground as he called out broken directions, his mind sharp even if his body was broken, guiding the soldier toward cover, warning of flanking positions. The soldier followed every sound, every gesture, trusting him. Together they turned chaos into survival, each movement timed perfectly. The alien's knowledge filling the gaps the soldier could not see. Bullets and plasma bolts tore through the air, smashing into walls and scattering debris. The soldier ducked behind a console, firing bursts to keep the enemy pinned. He could hear their leader shouting orders, demanding they capture the human alive and kill the broken warrior. The soldier's blood boiled at those words. His voice cut through the chaos as he shouted back, "You'll have to kill me first!" The alien's gaze sharpened at those words, something inside him breaking free from the chains of despair, though he could not stand. His mind surged with purpose. He shouted broken phrases, forcing the soldier to reroute wires and hit specific sequences on the console. And with one last command, the system roared to life, signals bursting into the sky like lightning, carrying the stolen codes across the battlefield. The enemy realized too late what was happening. Their leader screamed, charging forward, but the soldier met him head-on, slamming into him with the full weight of his fury. Their struggle brutal, weapons clashing, fists smashing against armor. The soldier fought like a man possessed, every strike fueled by the promise he had made not to abandon the one behind him. Finally, with a roar, he drove the leader to the ground, his rifle butt smashing into his helm until silence followed. But even as victory echoed in the room, more enemies closed in, their weapons raised. The soldier staggered back, exhausted, gripping his rifle with trembling hands. But before they could fire, the comm console surged. The codes fully transmitted, and in the distance, the roar of enemy ships suddenly cut short. Their systems collapsing one by one, the alien warrior's eyes shone with pride. His broken body shaking, but his spirit alive, he had done it. They had done it together. The enemy soldiers faltered, their weapons wavering as the sound of their fleets crashing into silence filled the air. The soldier stood tall, blood on his face, smoke swirling around him, the alien watching him with something close to awe. In that moment, the universe itself had shifted, because a human soldier and a paralyzed alien had stood together between life and death, and they had changed the course of the war. The battlefield was shaking with the sound of distant explosions, but inside the ruined outpost, the world seemed frozen. The soldier stood over the broken consoles, his chest heaving, sweat and blood running down his face. His rifle still raised, though his arms trembled from exhaustion. The alien warrior lay slumped against the wall, his eyes glowing faintly in the flicker of failing lights. Both of them knew the codes had been sent. They had crippled the enemy fleet, but survival was far from certain. The soldier could hear shouts outside, boots pounding, more enemies regrouping, and he knew they would not stop until both of them were dead. He turned back to the alien kneeling beside him, gripping his shoulder firmly, his voice raw but steady. "We're not done yet, you hear me? You're still breathing, and as long as you are, we fight." The alien's lips trembled. He tried to shake his head weakly, his claws twitching as if to push the human away, but his voice was too faint, his eyes betraying the truth. He did not want to die, not anymore. The soldier pushed himself up, his back straightening despite the ache in his muscles, and lifted the alien back into his arms, the weight heavier than before, but no less worth carrying. He staggered forward through the shattered doorway as smoke and fire lit the skies above. Outside the ruins, enemy soldiers spotted them and shouted. Their weapons rising in unison, the soldier didn't hesitate. He threw himself behind a broken wall, plasma bolts tearing into the ground where he had just been standing. The alien groaned in pain, his claws gripping tightly to the human's armor. Not in anger this time, but in desperate will to hold on. The soldier whispered through clenched teeth, "Stay with me. I promised I won't leave you." He leaned around the wall, firing precise bursts, each shot forcing the enemy back. But there were too many, their numbers growing, circling, cutting off escape routes. The engines roared closer, metal claws scraping against stone as scout machines fanned out, their searchlights cutting through smoke and ruin. The soldier pushed the last few steps to the transport, his boots slamming against the scorched hull as he ducked inside, the darkness swallowing them. The alien's breath loud in his ear, he crouched low, shifting the alien carefully to the floor, pressing his finger to his lips in a silent command for silence. Though he knew the warrior could not move much anyway, the searchlights passed over the wreckage, beams cutting through cracks in the metal, shadows shifting across the walls. The soldier held his breath, his hand hovering over his rifle, his muscles tensed like coiled springs. Outside, heavy footsteps thudded against the dirt, voices barking orders. "Find them! No one leaves alive!" The alien's chest rose and fell quickly, his eyes wide with fear, but the soldier glanced at him and whispered softly, "Trust me." Seconds stretched into eternity as the lights passed again. One beam lingering longer this time, stopping just outside the transport. The soldier's hand tightened on his weapon, his finger brushing the trigger, ready to fight if the patrol came inside. But then the beam moved on and the footsteps faded slightly. Though not far enough to be safe, the soldier exhaled slowly. His body shaking from the tension, he looked down at the alien, who stared at him with an expression torn between confusion and awe. The human had chosen to fight for him, to protect him when his own kind had walked away. The alien's lips moved weakly, and though the soldier could not understand the words, he understood the feeling behind them. It was not shame this time. It was something closer to gratitude. The soldier leaned his head back against the cold wall, whispering to himself, "We'll get out of this, somehow." And in the distance, the alarm still echoed, promising that the worst was yet to come. The wrecked transport was silent except for the sound of the alien's uneven breathing and the soldier's slow, controlled breaths as he crouched in the dark, every sense sharpened by the knowledge that enemy patrols were still nearby. The walls of the ruined vessel creaked now and then, the sound carrying like a warning. The soldier pressed his back against the cold steel, his rifle balanced across his lap, his eyes never leaving the cracks where faint light slipped through. Outside, muffled voices barked orders. The mechanical growl of search drones sweeping across the battlefield sent vibrations through the ground. And with each thrum, the alien flinched, fear flashing across his scarred face. He tried to whisper, his voice broken and weak. And though the soldier could not understand the words, he could read the meaning in his tone. It was not just fear of being found, it was fear of being a burden. Fear that the soldier's life would be wasted protecting something the galaxy already called useless. The soldier turned his head toward him, his voice low but steady. "You're not useless." "Not to me." The alien's eyes widened slightly at the words, as if he had not heard such defiance against his fate in a very long time. His claws twitched faintly against the ground, scratching at the metal floor in frustration, as if he wanted to argue but could not find the strength. The soldier shifted closer, his tone softer now, almost like a promise. "I've seen men die for nothing. I won't let you be one of them." Outside, a beam of harsh light cut across the broken hull, sliding past the opening with chilling slowness. Both of them froze. The soldier pressing one hand against the alien's chest to still him. The alien's heart hammered beneath his palm, strong despite the broken body. The light paused as though the patrol had sensed something, then finally moved on, leaving the two of them in heavy silence again. The soldier knew they could not stay here forever. The enemy was combing the battlefield, and sooner or later they would sweep this wreck. But moving now was too risky, so they waited, the minutes dragging like hours. The alien's breathing gradually slowed, exhaustion pulling at him. But the soldier stayed sharp, his eyes scanning, his body ready to spring at the first sign of intrusion. In that stillness, the alien's gaze drifted toward him, watching this strange human who had chosen to carry him instead of leaving. His own people had mocked him, had walked away, yet this soldier had stood firm against them, had risked himself. And though shame still burned in his chest, something else stirred quietly in its shadow. A spark of reluctant trust. His lips parted, forming sounds that were broken but soft, as if he wanted to ask why. Why risk so much for him? But the soldier only answered with a faint smile and a whisper, "Because life still matters." Then came the sound that froze them both. Heavy footsteps just outside, closer than before, followed by the sharp hum of a drone locking onto heat signatures. The soldier's pulse quickened. He pulled the alien closer, lowering them both into the deepest shadows of the wreck, his free hand gripping his rifle, his finger tight against the trigger. The searchlight sliced across the interior now, sweeping the floor, climbing the walls. The alien's throat tightened with panic. But the soldier leaned close, whispering firmly, "Breathe slow. Stay with me." The light paused again, resting dangerously close to where they hid, and the sound of metal boots clanged as someone approached the opening. For a moment, it seemed certain they would be discovered. The soldier's muscles tensed, ready to fire, ready to fight. But then a voice outside called out, impatient, commanding the patrol to move further east. The boots hesitated, then retreated, and the beam vanished, leaving them in darkness once more. The alien exhaled shakily, his head sinking back, his eyes reflecting both fear and disbelief. He had expected to be found, expected death, but once again the human had stood between him and the end. The soldier allowed himself one slow breath before whispering, "We can't stay here, they'll be back." His voice was quiet but sure. The alien closed his eyes for a moment, fighting the shame that clawed at him, because he knew he could not walk, could not even crawl. Every step forward depended entirely on the human beside him. Yet despite that shame, he also felt something else, a flicker of hope, fragile but real. The soldier adjusted his rifle and shifted closer, preparing to move again. He looked at the alien and spoke in a voice that carried more than words. "Trust me." And in that moment, though the battlefield around them still echoed with danger, the paralyzed warrior allowed himself to believe, if only for a breath, that maybe this human truly could carry him beyond the shadow of death. The soldier waited until the sounds of the patrol faded into the distance, then adjusted his grip on the alien warrior's limp body, his muscles aching from the weight but his will unbroken. He knew time was against them. Every minute on this battlefield meant more patrols, more scanners, more death circling like vultures. Still, he pushed forward, moving from shadow to shadow, his boots crunching quietly over broken stone and twisted metal. The alien's head rested against his shoulder, eyes half open, watching him with a mixture of disbelief and confusion. Every step the soldier took seemed to fight against the universe itself, because everything in this war screamed to leave the alien behind, to save himself. But he refused, and it was in that defiance that their bond slowly began to form. They slipped into the broken shell of a communications outpost. Its walls scorched black, consoles melted into twisted shapes, and in the gloom the soldier lowered the alien gently onto the ground. Crouching beside him, sweat running down his face. His breath heavy, the alien tried to speak, his voice a broken rasp, and though the words were foreign, the soldier caught the rhythm of guilt in them. The warrior was blaming himself, calling himself dead weight, useless. His claws scraped against the floor as if trying to end the shame with his own hands. But the soldier caught one trembling arm and held it firm. "Stop," he whispered, his voice sharp but steady. "You are not useless, not to me, not now." The alien froze at those words, staring at him as though he could not believe them, as though hope was something too dangerous to hold. The silence stretched, broken only by the distant thrum of engines and the faint crackle of still-burning fires. Then the alien's eyes narrowed, and with what little strength he had left, he forced out guttural words that made the soldier pause. The human did not understand the language, but the tone carried something heavy, a secret hidden under pain. The soldier leaned closer, his hand pressing gently against the alien's chest to keep him calm. "What is it?" he whispered. The alien coughed, then spoke again, his voice low, strained. But this time he pointed a trembling claw toward the shattered consoles, toward the remains of the comm systems. His eyes sharp with urgency, the soldier followed his gaze, and realization struck him. This warrior knew something about the enemy, something vital. Step by step he began to move, his legs steady but his mind racing. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound closer than it was. He knew this was madness, carrying an enemy who could once have killed him without effort. But now helpless as a child, yet something in his gut told him it was right, that leaving this creature behind would haunt him more than death itself. The alien's breathing was rough against his ear, each breath a reminder that it still fought to live. That hope still clung to it, even as its people had abandoned it. The soldier pushed forward through the ruins. Moving from cover to cover, his senses stretched thin. He could hear the patrol getting closer. Their laughter sharp, mocking, he ducked behind a burned-out vehicle. The alien trembling in his hold, he whispered, "Stay quiet. Stay with me." And though they did not share words, the alien seemed to understand, its head resting against him. Trusting a human it once would have hated, the patrol passed close, their voices growing louder, speaking of scraps and spoils, mocking the ones left behind, calling them weak and useless. The soldier's jaw tightened at the word. Knowing the alien in his arms heard it too. Knowing how deep it cut, the patrol moved away, their shadows fading into smoke, and only then did the soldier breathe again, his grip firm as he continued forward, carrying not just the weight of a body, but the weight of a choice that might change everything. Because in that moment, on a battlefield where everyone else had turned away, one human soldier stood between life and death for a broken alien who had been called useless. And neither of them knew that this was only the beginning of a story far larger than either could imagine. The soldier had barely carried the alien beyond the wreckage of the burning vehicles when a sharp voice cut through the smoke. Ordering him to stop, he froze instantly, his grip tightening on the alien's broken body. And from the haze emerged a group of armed figures, aliens of the same species as the paralyzed warrior he carried, their armor battered but their eyes sharp, scanning the scene with cold amusement. The leader sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're wasting your strength, human. That one is nothing now. Useless." The word echoed like poison in the air. The soldier glanced at the warrior slumped against his shoulder and saw the shame flicker in its eyes. The alien tried to look away, its claws twitching weakly. As though the insult was heavier than its broken body, the soldier shifted his stance, squaring his shoulders, refusing to let go. Even as the armed group stepped closer, their weapons glinting in the fading light. The leader laughed, a cruel sound as he pointed his weapon lazily. He was once strong, yes, but strength dies quickly when the body fails. We left him here because he is no longer worth carrying. Only a fool would waste time on him." The soldier's heart pounded, but his voice was steady. Low and firm. "Then I'll be the fool," he said. The aliens laughed louder at that, shaking their heads. But the soldier did not flinch, his grip on the paralyzed warrior growing tighter. His eyes locked on the leader. "He's still alive, and as long as he is, he has worth." The aliens exchanged looks, their amusement turning into something darker. Their weapons slowly rising, one of them hissed, "You protect him, human? Then you share his weakness." The alien in his arms tried to speak, a broken growl slipping out, as if begging the soldier to put him down, to save himself. But the soldier shook his head firmly, whispering, "I'm not leaving you." The group of aliens spread out, circling them like hunters toying with prey. The leader's smile sharpened. "You don't understand, human. This warrior was ours once, our leader, our pride. But he is finished. We cast him aside. And you cannot change that." The soldier's eyes narrowed, his voice steel. "Then maybe you never deserved him." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of the alien's ragged breathing. The leader snarled, insulted by the defiance. "You think to judge us? You, a mere human?" He raised his weapon, pointing it at the paralyzed warrior's head. "Step aside. Let us finish what we started." The soldier moved instantly, placing his own body between the barrel and the helpless figure in his arms, his stance firm, though his heart raced. "You'll have to shoot through me," he said, his voice low but carrying a weight that made even the mocking aliens pause. The leader tilted his head, studying him, then smirked. "So be it." His finger tightened on the trigger. But before the shot rang out, the soldier shifted, pulling his sidearm free with lightning speed, the barrel flashing as he aimed directly at the leader's face. "Try it," the soldier growled, the sudden fire in his eyes making the alien hesitate. Tension crackled in the air like a storm ready to break, each side waiting for the other to move. The paralyzed warrior in his arms trembled, his gaze flicking between them, as though he could not believe someone would risk this much for him. The standoff stretched into heartbeats that felt like hours, the smoke curling around them, the smell of ash heavy in their lungs. Finally, the leader lowered his weapon slowly, a mocking grin spreading across his face. "You have spirit, human, more than I expected. But spirit cannot change fate. Carry him if you wish. It will only drag you both to death." He gestured for his group to pull back, their laughter echoing as they melted into the smoke. Leaving only the soldier and the broken warrior behind, the soldier exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders, though his grip remained strong. He looked down at the alien in his arms, its eyes wet with something that was not just pain, but confusion, disbelief, and maybe even a spark of something else. The soldier whispered, "I told you I don't leave the living behind." And in that moment, standing on a battlefield where everyone else had abandoned him, the paralyzed alien realized this human was unlike any he had ever known, and for the first time since his fall, the word useless no longer felt like the end of his story. The soldier tightened his hold on the broken alien warrior, his eyes scanning the ruined horizon, smoke still rising in thick black columns, the air filled with the faint crackle of fires that had not yet died out. Every sound carried danger, every shadow could hide patrols. Yet he moved forward anyway, step by step, carrying the weight of a body that could no longer move. Each breath from the alien against his shoulder was shallow and weak, but still there, still fighting, and that alone was enough for the soldier to keep going. He spotted the half-buried wreck of a transport ship not far ahead, its hull torn apart but its inner shell intact. Maybe it could give them cover, maybe even something he could use to get them both out. He adjusted his grip and pressed on, his boots slipping over shattered metal and ash, every movement slow but steady. The alien groaned in pain as the soldier shifted him, whispering broken words in his own tongue. Words the soldier could not understand, but the tone was clear. It was shame and despair. The soldier shook his head firmly, speaking aloud even though he knew the alien might not understand. "Don't say it, don't ask me to leave you, because I won't." His voice was hard, but filled with something the alien had not heard in a long time. Conviction. The alien's claws dug weakly into his armor, not in attack, but in a silent plea. The soldier kept walking, his back aching under the weight, sweat dripping down his brow, every step slower than the last. He knew the longer they stayed in the open, the higher the chance of being found. His heart pounded with the thought of enemy scouts, and just as if the universe had heard his fear, a loud alarm suddenly wailed from somewhere in the distance. The soldier froze, his body stiff, the alien's head snapping weakly toward the sound. The alarm echoed through the ruins like a warning, and then came the voices, sharp and commanding, followed by the mechanical rumble of engines. They were being hunted. The soldier cursed under his breath, his mind racing. The patrols must have seen movement or picked up heat signals, and now they were closing in. He tightened his grip on the alien and forced himself forward. Faster this time, ignoring the burn in his muscles. The broken transport was his only hope. If he could get inside, maybe he could hide long enough to come up with a plan. The alien tried again to speak, his voice ragged and full of despair, as if begging to be put down, as if trying to save the human from sharing his fate, but the soldier gritted his teeth, whispering, "You're not a burden. You're not finished. Not while I can still carry you." The alien's eyes widened at the words, disbelief flickering in them, because no one, not even his own people, had said such things since his fall, and though his body was broken, something deep inside him stirred. Something he thought had died. The battlefield was silent now, the smoke rising slowly from the ruins where once ships roared and soldiers screamed, and in the middle of this silence lay an alien warrior who had once been feared by many, a name that echoed across worlds as a symbol of power and terror. But now his body was broken, his legs paralyzed, his arms trembling as he tried to move but failed, his chest rising and falling with painful breaths, and his eyes staring up at the dark sky that gave him no answer, no comfort, nothing but cold emptiness. He remembered when the galaxy praised him, when crowds cheered his victories, when even his enemies spoke his name with trembling voices. But those days were gone, and now the whispers were cruel. They called him useless, a burden, a shadow of what he once was. His own people who once followed him with pride now left him behind without a second thought, their ships rising into the sky as he lay on the ground, staring helplessly, abandoned in the dirt like broken metal that no one cared to repair. And as he watched the last glow of their engines fade away, he felt the heavy weight of loneliness pressing into his chest, a weight far worse than the pain in his body. The battlefield was full of wreckage, shattered weapons, burning machines, and bodies of those who had fought and died. But for him, the war had not ended, because every second was now a war against despair. He tried to push himself up, but his legs refused to move. Numb and heavy like dead stones attached to his body, he clawed at the ground with weak hands, his sharp nails digging into the dirt as he tried to drag himself even a little forward. But the pain shot through his back like fire, and he collapsed again, his breathing turning into shallow gasps, his mind filled with questions he could not escape. Was this how his story ended? Not in a blaze of glory, but in silence, abandoned. Left to die alone on a cold battlefield, he remembered the faces of those who had stood beside him, the ones who once swore loyalty to him, and he wondered if they ever looked back, if even for a moment they thought of him before flying away, or if they had erased him already, a forgotten name. A useless relic. His eyes burned with anger, but the anger soon melted into fear, a fear he had never known before because he had always been strong, always the one to inspire fear in others. And now he was the weak one. Now he was the one waiting helplessly, his ears catching the distant sounds of enemy patrols moving among the wreckage, scavengers picking at the dead. And he realized that if they found him, he could not fight. He could not run. He would be nothing more than prey. His hands clenched the dirt, his jaw tightened. He wanted to scream, but his throat only let out a broken sound that echoed faintly, swallowed by the vast emptiness of the battlefield. And for the first time in his life, he felt small. Not a warrior, not a leader, not even a soldier, but a broken body lying in the dust, waiting for death. The sky above was gray, heavy with smoke and ash, and he stared at it with wide eyes, remembering the days when he stood under clear skies, his armor shining, his voice strong as he led charges into battle. But those memories felt like they belonged to someone else now, another life, another being, because the one lying here could not even lift himself. The cold wind brushed against his skin and made him shiver, and he thought about how cruel the universe was. how it raised him high only to throw him down into the dirt. And he could almost hear the voices of those who had mocked him when he fell, whispering the word again and again. Useless, useless, useless! It rang in his ears like a curse, a word heavier than any weapon as minutes dragged on like hours. He felt his strength fading, his eyes closing against his will. But fear jolted him awake. Fear that if he closed his eyes now he would never open them again. Fear that his story would end not with a roar but with silence. He tried again to move, dragging himself a few inches before collapsing. His arms trembling, sweat dripping down his face, the taste of blood in his mouth, and as he lay there, his mind drifted to thoughts he never allowed before. Thoughts of what life meant if no one cared, if no one came, if even the stars above turned away from him. His body shook with rage and despair mixed together, a storm inside a broken shell, and he whispered into the dirt, a weak voice, asking if anyone could hear him, anyone at all. But there was no answer, only the distant echo of footsteps and the low growl of machines in the far distance, and he felt a tear slip down his cheek, burning hot against his cold skin. He hated that tear, hated the weakness it showed, but he could not stop it because deep inside he was afraid. Afraid of dying alone, afraid of being forgotten, afraid that the galaxy would erase him completely, that even his enemies would not remember his name. And as the silence pressed closer, he wondered if maybe this was his punishment. For all the battles he fought, for all the lives he took, maybe the universe had judged him useless and left him to fade away. His heart pounded weakly, his body broken, his spirit cracking. And still he waited, because somewhere inside, hidden deep under the pain, a spark of hope refused to die. A small whisper that maybe, just maybe, someone would come before it was too late. The human soldier walked carefully through the ruins of the battlefield, his boots crunching against broken steel and burned earth, the smoke stinging his lungs as he searched for survivors. His rifle hanging ready in his hands, he had seen countless fields like this before. Places where life and death blended together until only silence remained. Yet something about this wreckage felt different, heavier, as if the ground itself still remembered the screams. The soldier's eyes scanned the horizon, catching the faint glint of metal among the shadows. At first he thought it was another piece of broken armor left behind. But then it moved, ever so slightly, and he froze, his instincts screaming at him to stay alert, his finger tightening on the trigger. He approached slowly, every sense sharp, until the shape became clear. An alien warrior lying half-buried in dirt and ash, its body battered and broken, its once glorious armor cracked, its eyes open but filled with pain. For a long moment the soldier did not move. He knew this species. He knew their reputation. This was no ordinary fighter. This alien had been a legend once, feared across countless systems. Yet here he was, reduced to a shattered body that could barely breathe. The soldier's heart pounded. Every training manual told him to leave it. Move on, never risk his life for an enemy, but as he looked into the alien's eyes, he did not see a monster. He saw desperation. He saw a warrior abandoned by his own people, a soul caught between pride and despair. The alien's lips moved, a faint sound escaping, not words he understood, but a plea carried in tone alone. The soldier swallowed hard, conflicted. If he tried to help, he would put himself in danger. The enemy could still be nearby, patrols could sweep through, and carrying a broken body would slow him down. But something deep inside refused to let him turn away. He lowered his weapon slowly, keeping his eyes sharp, scanning the shadows, then knelt beside the alien, the ground warm with the heat of recent fire. He could see the alien's legs twisted unnaturally, paralyzed, useless, its breathing ragged, its chest rising with effort. The soldier spoke quietly, his words steady. Even though he knew the alien might not understand, "You're still alive," he said, "and I don't leave the living behind." The alien's gaze flickered with confusion and disbelief, as though it had expected to be ignored again. To be left until death took it, the soldier reached out cautiously, his hand brushing aside the cracked armor. Checking for wounds, the alien flinched, a growl rising in its throat, but too weak to stop him, too broken to fight back. The soldier whispered again, "I'm not here to hurt you." And somehow, in that ruined battlefield, the alien's eyes softened just slightly, as if it wanted to believe. But the silence was broken by a distant sound, the crunch of feet on metal. Voices speaking in harsh tones. The soldier froze, pulling his rifle up again, his senses alert. The alien tried to raise its head, panic flashing in its eyes. Both of them knew what those voices meant. Others were coming, scavengers or soldiers. And if they found him here, standing over a broken enemy, the outcome would be blood. The soldier glanced down at the alien. Torn between leaving and staying, he could save himself by walking away. No one would know. No one would blame him. But he saw again the helpless figure lying before him, saw the shame and fear in its trembling breaths. And he made his choice. He would not abandon it. He shifted his rifle to his back and crouched lower, lifting the alien's arm over his shoulder. The weight heavy but manageable, the alien gasped in pain. Its claws digging into his armor, yet it did not resist. It clung to him as though he was the last thread left.